I will call the regular Royalton School Board meeting to order. It is 6 o'clock, so let's start with the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. Let the record reflect that we have everybody here tonight, so thanks for being here. Board chair comment. First meeting, help me out when I screw up, but otherwise I think we'll just keep going, right? So approval of the agenda. So Tyra, your motion?
I'll second it.
Randy seconded. Is there any discussion or anything to add?
One policy we need to pull out from E number 2. It's number 506. That one is not ready for second and final reading.
Late tomorrow.
It has to go back to the committee.
That's all. I'm sure because it's cold.
Okay, so policy 506 is getting pulled from the second reading. The other, so I have an item to talk about. We have to add under 10F, I'm gonna add pay equity implementation report. We need to, I don't know what we say, ratify, or we need to approve the pay equity report. So that'll be a 10F. And one thing to note about that as well, it's going to be covered during the board report by Scott is out, so is it Todd? Todd will be covering it. So one thing too, he's going to go over that, and then he's asked he's going to be leaving. So if we have questions about pay equity, he's including that in his discussion. Think about that, and then we'll further discussion down and do a vote. So I'll remind everybody while we're there too. So 2 additions, a motion to approve the agenda. One is to strike 506. The other is to add the pay equity at 10F. We, Tyra, motion, second by Randy. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay, or anybody? All right, approved. So moved. Appreciation, recognition, and presentations. That Dr. Gabata will be starting.
Chairman Barrett. I'm going to recognize Kathy Brenny, our second grade teacher. And Kathy won a contest program called Share the Joy at Spirit Radio 92.9. And if it's okay, it's a short paragraph. She's written kind of her own description. Is that all right if I do that? Has some feeling to it. Okay, so she heard on the radio, said, I heard on the radio that Spirit 92.9 was giving away $500 to you and a friend. All you had to do was write who you would share the $500 with. I heard it a few times before I decided to enter. The loss of Jerry Iser weighed heavy on my heart as I have taught one of his daughters and also coached 2 of them in Destination Imagination. After losing my dad 4 years ago, I've gained a whole different understanding on loss and how hard the holidays are after such a change. I thought that if they were chosen, it would bring a little extra cheer to their family. I really didn't think I would be picked because I never won anything. And I found out it was actually a process where there was a committee that read through the nominations and voted on 8 winners, and I was the final winner. I recorded the announcement on the radio. The radio station called her and she had to give the announcement and sent it to Amy Iser over the email, and she was thrilled and surprised. So She ended up being one of the winners, won $500, shared that with the Eisner family, which was timely because they had their benefit shortly after that. And she took the initiative, thought about it, took the initiative, and it turned out to be a really very positive thing. Kathy isn't always shy, but she tends to be shy. I think she's on online. And Kathy, do you want to add anything or share any comments? She gave you
Sure. I'm super shy, Phil. Always. Just kidding. Yeah, I was just really excited about it. Thanks for recognizing me for it. These being that I don't have any children of my own, a lot of these kids kind of become like my own. So it's kind of a cool thing. That's all I got.
She has a big heart and tends to take the initiative when she sees a chance to be a giver in these kinds of situations. So we have a certificate for you, Kathy, and maybe at some point we can get a picture also. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Recognition? No, we're good. All right, moving on to number 7, recognition of citizens for input purposes. So I am going to read a little something. At this time, we welcome the public for comment. I don't know if we have anybody signed up to speak. There is a sign-up sheet out there. Michelle, could you look to see, is there a sign-up sheet out there if anybody signed up? Otherwise, if you haven't signed up, you certainly can do it now. Remember to state your name, the subject you wish to comment on. Only speaker recognized by the chair will be allowed to speak. Comments by others will be ruled out of order. Right, avoid personal attacks when addressing the school board. The chair may terminate a speaker's privilege to address the board if infractions and personal attacks occur. So the school board reserves the right to impose limitations and restrictions as necessary in order to provide orderly, effective, and fair opportunity for all those present to be heard. Anybody want to speak tonight for public comment? Anybody? All right, we will move on then. And we will go to number 8, reports and news. So we'll start with school board committee reports. Anybody have anything to report on
I
committee?
can go with the policy committee. So we've looked at I think 14 different policies this last time, which was a lot. I think 12 out of the 14 were just reviews. There's only 2 that we made some significant changes to. The ones on the agenda tonight were mostly reviewed. One was a posting, so everything else has been good. So lots of policies and lots of reviews.
Finance committee met, we kind of just went over how we're going to set it up moving forward with Scott as a newer contract employee for us. So just kind of went over what we wanted to see and then what he could present to the board as a whole. And so moving forward, we'll be doing those presentations, but it should be pretty clean cut when we look at it. So.
Mr. Chair, I'm reporting on the mid-state report. We had a rather interesting meeting. We did not renew the contract for Simone Boland. So that is going to be a change. And also we have a new chair, Steve Bozer from Tiers, a new vice chair, Jason Blommer from Onamia, and Kathy Beckman from Swanville as the clerk, treasurer, whatever that position is. So those are the changes made. Again, we've had a lot of people leaving the jobs and some people coming in. The instability of the jobs in that situation has been pretty tough. And it's really tough on those kids. So because of that and the various other things, the board was made very aware of. So that's where we're at with that.
Mary, question, do they have a time frame for replacing Simone?
I think that they'll probably open it up in February, the position, and she has every right to reapply if she chooses. However, there are other interested parties out there, I guess, already. So whatever happens, you know, I don't know. I'm not really in that mix, but I will be when it does become presented to the board. So that'll be that. I mean, I think, you know, it's kind of a bittersweet thing, but it's time. It's time for that change. And sometimes it just is. You know.
Anybody else, any other board committee? All right, then we will go to 8B Superintendent Report.
Evening. You may have gotten text messages or emails. We are gonna have a 2-hour late start tomorrow. We're under a windshield advisory for warning, so it's gonna be anywhere from -35 to -40 or above. So us and neighboring districts have decided to go a 2-hour late start. We'll just keep an eye on it to determine what happens next. It sounds like this stretch is going into Thursday, potentially morning, so we'll see what happens for Wednesday. We have a lot going on tomorrow night, basketball, wrestling, so hopefully we can continue having school so we can keep those events going. As you know, we've had to make other adjustments to our activity schedule, so we're running out of dates to make up time, so let's hope that it warms up a little bit, at least to get us to our date. So made that announcement. I did want to give an update on that vaccination policy 491, vaccination testing and face covering policy that we called that special meeting on January 10th to approve. We did finally get response from the Supreme Court that following Thursday, so the 13th, and stating that they would not be putting that into effect from the ETS. So according to that policy, if you look at page 2, if you were to have it, Roman numeral 3, it's only in effect if legally required. So once that was pulled back from the Supreme Court, did not go into effect, this policy became null and void. So it sits out there, but it's not being enacted or implemented in any way because it's no longer a valid policy or enforceable at this time based on that language in the policy. So I want to give an update on that. And then just an update on our data requests. So far, we've had 4 data requests from the public. As you know, we get legal advice to review those for any information that must be redacted according to data privacy law. So far, the first data request was actually withdrawn before any of the major work got involved. So cost us probably around $200 around that for attorney costs. The second request was narrowed but not withdrawn, and that's going to run about $4,250 in attorney costs. The third was a much smaller request. That's going to run about $500 in attorney costs. And the fourth one is a request that seems as a data request and it's written, but in actuality it's more of an information seeking. It doesn't really require data, so to speak. So that's minimal of around $200 conversation. I'm sure we handle it right. We'll see if there's any other questions with that. With staff time, we think about our technology director who has to go in and pull this data to get to the attorney. It's about 8 to 10 hours of work. So in sum, we're looking at about $5,500 so far in cost for these particular data requests. So I just want to make sure we had an update since those have been discussed in previous meetings. And other than that, we just have a very busy week with activities. So I hope people come out Tuesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, all sorts of basketball, wrestling happening. Our wrestling team's doing really, really well. So it's really exciting to see that success.
Questions?
So for the data requests, I'm curious, are they coming from people that are tax paying to our district? Are they coming from people outside of our district?
One parents, but one was open enrolled and one is not. So.
Okay. And then when we get those, are we able to do any back and forth to try to lower these costs or not?
We've asked for clarifying questions to potentially reduce the breadth of the request, and that
Okay.
happened in one of them.
Okay.
And then again, the first one was withdrawn after very little work involved. Like I said, it was about $200 worth of attorney costs.
And then these come out of the general fund?
General fund, yeah.
Okay.
So taxpayers pay.
Yeah.
So the tax.
And the taxpayers don't.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions for
Christine, I have a question for you. So after we passed that policy the other night.
Yeah.
The next morning we had a meeting and there had been a couple school districts that had gotten served OSHA.
Yeah.
I think, is that continuing on? 'Cause
Well-
I know the ones that were at that meeting where there was a policy committee and it was, by 11 o'clock the next morning, OSHA had already served places with fines, so.
No, there was an area district that had a staff person had already gone in and said they weren't in compliance, so OSHA came out and they had to, there was a lot of work involved to give them to show that they were getting into compliance, so OSHA acted immediately.
I thought it was good for all the board members to know, so it looked like a hoop that we just had to jump through, but we had to jump.
Because that was on Wednesday. and
Yeah,
our
that
vote
was
on
Wednesday
Monday.
morning already. I mean, it's,
Yeah, they were in trouble with it.
yeah, so, just so everybody knew that did happen. It wasn't just a threat, it did happen, so.
Other questions for Dr. Richmond? All right, then we will move to 8C, Business Manager Report. And I believe Todd will be out there presenting for us tonight.
Yep, good evening, everyone. Todd Netsky with SMS. Thank you for allowing me to stand in for Scott tonight. So I'm going to share my screen here and review the December budget update. So the host disabled screen sharing, so if that could be allowed, then I can share here.
He is working on it, Todd, so hopefully.
Okay. Okay, should be good. Okay, has everybody seen that?
Yes.
Okay, so we have the December budget update. So this would be for revenues and expenditures posted through December of 2021. And looking at enrollment, the original adopted budget was adopted at 920 ADMs. Looking back at FY 21, we ended FY 21 at 921. And enrollment as of December 8th and January 12th is at 922. So enrollment's been pretty flat and currently slightly better than the adopted budget. And I'm sure Scott's talked about the next kind of big task at hand would be to revise the current year budget. I'm sure Christine's involved with that as well. Looking at revenues then through December 31, Scott's highlighted some things that are different compared to last year at the same time. So through December 31, we're at 229,289 collected in federal revenues. Last year we had collected 315,214, so down 85,000. And overall, though, revenues are up 453,519, primarily due to state aid, which is up 410,000. And you can see we've collected about 5% more of budget compared to last year at this time as a percent of where we ended up. So state aids are coming in nicely. And I think in the next slide here, so it's still behind on federal draws, and it did additional draws in January, and this will be reflected in the January budget update. So sounds like our federal draws will be in line with the prior year, as our current year budget is pretty close to last year where we ended up. So federal grant draws should catch up. Moving on to expenditures. Currently 509,283 ahead of last year at this time. And Christine, can you help me out? Is payroll every other week or is it twice a month?
It's twice a month, 15th and 31st.
Okay. So it's, and this is on the program side, okay. So just looking at these a little bit, and Scott didn't reference these, but it looks like we're tracking higher on site admin costs compared to last year by about 16,000. That's not a super big deal, but our budget is lower than last year's final. So I think in that revised budget process, you'll see this area increasing. Same with district admin. As a percent of budget, we're tracking quite a bit higher than last year. So probably some shuffling around there between categories with that revised budget. Overall, we're about 3% ahead of the prior year pace. And Scott made some notes here. Regular ed costs are up due to COVID. So we hit the federal grant code, but that's also impacting our regular ed costs, which is the 200 program series. Extracurricular activities are back to pre-COVID levels and even above a little. So spending's back up in those categories. And likely we're seeing admissions and student fees like that up as well. And then CARES funding being spent for one-time expenditures is impacting the 509-283 ahead of where we were last year as well. And pay equity report. So Scott had some notes here, and I think I'll just speak to this right now, just in general. So every 3 years, the district has to go through a pay equity review. And the process essentially requires us to look at all the job classes, kind of all the different job positions, if you will, within the district. And we need to report number of females, number of males in each of those jobs, as well as average, actually the minimum salary range for each of those jobs, as well as the maximum. And the good news is the testing, we were compliant in all areas. So basically all look good there. So this is a look at the pay equity implementation report that basically needs signature by the board chair tonight. So any questions on either of those reports? If y'all have gotten to know Scott a little bit, this is right up his alley. All right.
Anybody, any questions for Scott? Excuse me, Todd, taking Scott's place, especially on the pay equity. We did move that. That is agenda item 10F.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Todd. So principal report.
Board members and Dr. Burkamp. We have kindergarten information night coming up already, February 7th. Seems like January this, almost it's the end of January. It's at 6:30 in the cafeteria. So thank you to all of you for spreading the word, helping recruit. Expect a good group of people to come. A lot of staff help out with that, so it's very appreciated. So there's lots of time for people to get their questions answered, get to visit the classrooms, meet the kindergarten teachers. Usually goes very well. February is I Love to Read month, so Kathy Top promotes that through a calendar of activities, and we run things through the media center. So every year in February, along with the rest of the country, that's the celebration for I Love to Read month. So lots of fun activities for the students. We continue to make adjustments with COVID in our communication. So our physical education teacher, Erin Meyer, along with Nicole Cole, created a video introducing Jump Rope for Heart. Usually we have a big assembly, so they put together a really excellent video introducing the program. Jump Rope for Heart's not until March, I think second Friday in March. But this is a way to get the students interested. We raise money, usually raise $10,000 or so for Jump Rope. So congratulations to Erin and Nicole. And we have a pause production video that's shown every week. I think I showed it to the board one time. That continues with the work of Sherry Bishop and Nicole Call again. And the students lead the whole school in the pledge. with that, announce birthdays. We have a word of the week for the social worker and the students get involved. This last week it was positivity, finding ways to be positive and kind to each other. So it's a good organizing theme, and it's all students presenting, so it's good practice for them to be able to talk to the public and show some leadership. And finally, Sherry Bishop, through our Gifted and Talented program, brought a group of 5th and 6th grade students to a program called Spark Science. It's a conference held at St. Cloud State, sponsored by Sourcewell. So we continue to try to give students enrichment kinds of activities, and I know they're really excited going there. Sherry said it went really well, and she continues to do an excellent job with that program. So examples of some really good things going on throughout the district. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Garrett, Superintendent Report, members of the board, I have 3 short things for you tonight. Wanted to recognize the Royal American Legion. We have our NHS Induction Honors Breakfast on February 24th. And then the middle school honors breakfast on March 1st. And the Legion is donating the entire thing for us this year. So it'll be no cost to parents to attend. There was a time in this community's history where the Legion was not able to do those types of things for us, and they have, as an organization, got to a point where they're really able to help us out and do these types of things. This was unsolicited. They came to us with this offer of being able to do this, so it was really kind of a big deal. And so I'd like to thank the Royal American Legion for their continued support of our schools. They are a tremendous organization to have in our corner and to work with throughout the school year. We finished the vision testing in January. We had to postpone it with things that were going on prior to Christmas. We did the elementary, and then we came back after the holiday, and we did 6, 7, 8, and 10 10th grades. We missed vision testing last year. We also had some staff members stop in and get their eyes checked, which is encouraged. It is really a cool deal. The camera that they use is the Lions 5M8 district, which is central Minnesota, has 2 cameras that they purchased. They're about $8,000 to $10,000 a piece, and it simply takes a picture of your eyes, and if the kid needs to see a doctor, it prints out a sheet, and we send it home to parents, and they can bring that right into their eye doctor. And so we probably had about 5 to 10 kids in the elementary school that we sent things home for. And then it, thankfully, as you get to middle school, when you ask the elementary kids if they're wearing contacts, none of them raise their hand. When we got to 10th grade, how many of you are wearing glasses or contacts? Like half the class raised their hand. And you have to let the camera know that they're looking through glasses or they're looking through contacts. And but just in knowing that our students are having their vision needs met by their families, so we didn't have a lot of referrals when we got into the middle school and high school, which is a good deal. The last thing I have is we are putting the final touches on the master schedule for next year. We have one more committee meeting to kind of troubleshoot. We're a 3-section school, so every period of every day, you're looking to have 3 sections of classes available for every grade level. And sometimes staffing works out like that. Sometimes preps and lunches and band has to be here and FIAD has to be here because the kindergartners need the gym. And so you're dodging all of those obstacles, putting a schedule together that gives maximum availability to the most students. And we are on the stage of kind of pulling that committee that we've used to build the schedule back in and kind of troubleshoot areas that we might have concerns on, just looking at it as a first look. And then from there, we'll go to pre-registration nights. Ms. Flakus and I meet with all 9th through 12th graders and their families to help them through the registration process, answer questions, layout, grad requirements, answer questions about the schedule, about classes that they can take, and they're very well attended. And it's a good chance for us to work with students and prompt questions about, what are you thinking about your future, and are you thinking about taking this class, and this looks like a really tough schedule, or this looks like a really well balanced schedule, where your interests. So we have those types of conversations with students, and it's been a positive thing. So we'll do that over the course of 4 nights scheduled out here in the next month, where we meet with those students. So, any questions for me? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Swenson.
you.
Athletic Director.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Superintendent Report. I'm here to update you on shot clock stuff, which has changed over the past 2 months. So I know you have this presentation, so we'll just kind of expand on what I have in there. And this seemed like it was a quick process this fall, and to high school league, it's been a long time coming. This was first brought up this past fall, and then at our fall meetings, they talked about input, and then they asked for input from myself, my coaches, superintendent, to see where we fit into wanting shot clocks. There's a couple different options as far as implementation. The executive committee met. The executive committee met in December, and decided that they're going to implement the shot clock effective the 23-24 season. So it's not this year, it's not next year, it's the year after. Up until this time, it has been a mutual non-conference thing between schools if they want to use the shot clock, if they have them. So you would see like at the holiday tournaments or things like that, people will use them. It can be kind of a fun thing for people, but that is going to be for varsity competitions only in the 23-24 season. So I don't need to get into the negative reasons, but essentially the main reasons they were looking to pull from is tempo of the game. That was the big thing. Holding the ball. One of the big examples was a state tournament game on TV where one team sat across half court and held the ball for 8 minutes. And it was like a scoring in the teens affair. That was one of the big ones. And then another big push was our comfort level with surrounding other states, South Dakota, North Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin, and to be more in line with them. So go ahead and go down. Thank you. So because we have to implement this, I would like to get it going as quickly as we can. I know other conference schools have ordered theirs. Some like Maple Lake are getting theirs installed over their spring break. And what this does is the quicker it gets us, the quicker and the more time we have to use them, so our kids can adapt to having these things. So I costed it out. I had to get 3 quotes. I talked with Scott about this. So once I got the quotes, I started calling around. You have to have, in order to be compatible with our scoreboards, you have to have the same shot clocks. So we have to use Daktronics shot clocks. You can use different companies, but then you have to have a standalone system, and that can cost more. So what I did is I got the quote from AIM Electronics. They did our stuff already once before. They know our school, and I reached out to them. I got 1 quote. I had reached out to some other companies, and then somebody turned me on to Sourcewell. And Sourcewell, with their pricing, you don't have to get 2 other quotes because they are competitive pricing, because AIM does Minnesota. They do the upper Midwest for Daktronics. So if you go to strictly to Daktronics, they're gonna push you to AIM, and then you do Sourcewell, and then Brian Grandstrand, he's the one is our rep. He's the one that called me and talked me through this process. So we're gonna need 2 sets, one for the central gym where our girls play, and one for our south gym where our boys play. In my estimation, otherwise we get into scheduling, who's gonna use the gym at what times. We have 2 competition gyms. It only seems right and fair that we get 2 sets for each, so they can use them in practices and whatnot. So what it is it amounts to $6,300 $6,311 per pair. What this is, it's gonna be a black mounted above the backboard. It's gonna show the time for the scoreboard. It's gonna show the shot clock. And then there's LED strips around the inside of the backboard. So per pair, it's $6,311. That is the installed price, but that's not the wired price. We have to get it wired into the electrical. I was at Little Falls for a youth wrestling tournament 2 weekends ago, and they have shot clocks, and I looked, and just exactly what Tony Duval explained to me is you put like a snake skin component, a flex piece up to the top where there's electrical, and it's right there. So we already have them plugged in for our motors, for our pulley systems, for our backboards going up and down. So it's all right there. We just have to find the electrician to wire it. So whatever cost, additional cost that would be, $1,000, $1,500 for their time and doing 4 backboards for us. So the total cost of just the shot clocks installed, $12,622, and then we've got to have the electrician to wire it. I would like to do that in the spring again, give the summertime so people can use them, to see what's going on with them, how to work them. We were talking just before. There's about 4 pages of instructions for a shot clock operator, what they do, of when they start it, when they reset it, synchronization. I mean, there's going to be a big learning curve. So I'm gonna have to seek out specific people to train and to do this. I can't just have one, because no one wants to work 26 games in a season. And if people are gone or sick or whatever reason, we gotta have more people. So that's gonna take some time. We're gonna pay them. We're gonna have to add that to our Schedule C contract or Schedule D contract. But again, it's just for varsity competition. It's not gonna be for JV. We can convince somebody and they can kind of play around, be comfortable for the varsity game, but it's only required for the varsity. Okay. And then finally here, funding to pay for the project. We learned it was PMA funds, and if that's where you want to draw from, or I think that's a good way of using those funds. It won't cost us any more than what we already have already budgeted. And then the ongoing staffing costs, and roughly around 26 games, 13 on the road, 13 at home for each program. $25 a game. We're looking at about $800 extra just for adding that shot clock as a recurring cost. So, questions?
Do we know, are there any like grants or anything being offered by the state, since it's a tough spot, right? It's not our choice to do it, but we have to do it to host games, which we need to.
I guess the Sourcewell pricing gave us a 10% discount using them. The first quote I got from AIM was $6,500 per pair. Then when I told them, gave them the code or whatever it is for the Sourcewell pricing, you're able to get 10% off the equipment, not the installer, anything like that. So drop
I
it
was
to
just curious if there
6,300.
if we had heard of anything floating around.
Yeah, the problem is the league, the Minnesota State High School League, is in budget problems themselves, which is why all of the districts across the state went up in fees extraordinarily up to get their budget back in shape. Now, when COVID hit and they couldn't have those spring basketball state tournaments, that hurt their budget. So unfortunately, they probably aren't in a position to offer grants through them. That's kind of, but the PMA funds, remember, those are those construction funds that have to be spent. So this is an allowable expense that can come from that. It wouldn't have to be a general expenditure.
Additional questions from Mr. Meehan?
Mr. Chair. Now, when you have people there to work for these events, does that come out of the budget that you present to us? During the year, or is this something that we have to try to kind of budget through our people here?
With Scott,
They look at budget.
yeah, I build it into so I build what it costs per game.
Okay,
So basketball is the same, whether it's boys or girls.
right.
So I just add that cost in, and so when I budget out how much we need to set aside for workers, personnel, officials, that's broken down.
So it'll
into-
be included in that then. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
But not for next year. I don't think
Well,
we
yeah.
wouldn't pay anybody for next year, but 23, 24.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving along, we are at item 9, consent agenda approval. To remind the board is consenting to approve the items listed below as presented. At any time, any director can pull any of the items that they wish off. So this would include approval of the regular board minutes from 12/20/21, special board minutes from January 10th, 2022, the organizational board minutes from January 10th, claims, accounts, and financial, approval of new hires, approval of FMLA leaves. So,
Second.
any discussion? All right, all in favor of accepting the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right, motion approved. So we are on item 10. Discussion, information, and action items. We will start with the approval of donations by resolution. We have 4 of them for the resolution. I can read them quickly. Mary Hemish was generously donated $500 to Royalton School District. The St. Cloud Area Golden Gloves Boxing generously donated $2,000 to the Royalton Community Education Robotics. The Royalton Fire Department Relief Association donated $4,000, of which $2,000 will go towards community ed robotics, and the second $2,000 towards the middle school, high school robotics team. And the last is the Rice Area Sportsman's Club donating $1,500 to trap shooting. So they'll have to hear me again. So is there a member that would like to introduce these?
So moved.
Randy Hackett. Remember Hackett? I'm sorry, Randy.
Yeah, it happens when you're sitting there. You thought I was insane. It just happens when you're sitting there. It's like, wow.
Member Hackett introduced the following resolution and moved its adoption, whereas all the information is included in your packet. Again, the first one, Mary Hemish has generously offered to donate $500 to the Royalton School District. St. Cloud Area Golden Gloves Boxing has generously donated $2,000 to the Royalton Community Education Robotics. The Royalton Fire Department Relief Association generously donated $4,000. $2,000 will go towards the Royalton Community Education Robotics, and $2,000 will go to the Royalton Middle School, High School Robotics team. Rice Area Sportsman's Club generously donated $1,500 to the trap shooting team. Whereas the conditions on these gifts are included in the packet, therefore be it resolved by the Royalton School Board to greatly accept the gifts. The motion for adoption of the foregoing resolution was duly seconded by member
Lane.
Lane. And upon roll call vote being taken thereupon, the following voted.
Director Bowman.
Aye.
Director Garretts.
Aye.
Director Hackett.
Aye.
Director Hofstad. Aye. Director Lang.
Aye.
Director Roy.
Abstain.
So 5 members have voted, well, and 1 abstained, so 6 therefore in favor of, and the 0 voted against. And the following abstained, member Roaring. The foregoing resolution is approved this day, January 24th of January 2022. The next one, item B, grant from the Central Minnesota Library Exchange. Anybody, Dr. Rootkamp, you want to talk about this or want to look at the letter? Okay, thank you, Michelle. Mr. Hagman can maybe talk
Yeah.
about this.
Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. I got an email from the Library Exchange and applied for the grant and was notified, I think in December, that they were, I think I had applied for 800 and that they were gonna give us 1,000. So I think we're gonna get some more new books with it.
And our elementary. had received this last time.
So it's the action item for us to vote on acceptance. All right. Anybody care to move that motion?
Point of order, does this have to be done by resolution? All donations have to be.
Except this is a grant.
It's
This
a
is
grant.
Yeah, it's a grant.
All right,
That
so
you
then,
wrote
then I
for.
don't, all right.
So moved.
Is there a second? Angela. It was moved by Director Lang and seconded by Director Roaring to approve the grant from Central Minnesota Library Exchange. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Motion passes 6-0-0. School closing makeup day.
Okay, so as you all know, we had to, for the next slide, please. Out of an abundance of caution, we closed school on December 17th, I believe is the dates. There we go, December 17th. We are required to have, if you want to go to the next slide, please. We're required to have attendance for teachers and students. So currently there are 183 work days required for teachers to meet according to their contract. There are 165 mandatory days for student attendance per Minnesota state statute. Our current calendar has 170 student contact days with 183 teacher work days. As you recall, we did get approved 5 e-learning days at the beginning of the fall in September. So in the event that we had inclement weather, we would have 5 days could be considered e-learning days and not have to make them up. We did put a caveat in that the first 2 days of inclement weather would be snow days to ensure that kids get that opportunity. So we need to talk about what we're going to do about that day to make up, because we do need to meet that contract obligation of 183 days. So as you know, we have 170 built in for students. So we would not have to bring a student back and still meet statute requirements for student contact days. So we have a couple of different options. We could bring teachers and students back on April 18th, which is Easter Monday. We could bring just teachers back on the 18th. Or another option would be we bring teachers back on June 1st. They have their final day on the 31st for teachers, just teacher contact day, no students. That's a day after Memorial Day that they come back. So there's a few options. I will tell you that our calendar this year is really, really, really tight in the winter time. So from January through the end of May, there are very few days where we're not in school. A lot of districts have spring breaks for a week. Other districts have other days built in where they have more 4-day weeks. We have very few of those. So knowing the number of subs that we've been needing this entire fall and winter for student or for teacher absences and staff absences, I can't really in good conscience think about taking that April 18th day away right now, just for 1 day before winter break. I'm fearful that to get through January of 31 days, May, I just don't know what that would do for subbing issues if it would increase those. So my recommendation, actually I have 2 recommendations in this case. I think for this particular situation, we should just bring teachers back alone on June 1st. The students have enough days built in, doesn't have to change families' calendars then. Teachers will just add it on at the very end and we would do some professional development on that day. And then, or the day prior, whichever we'll figure out that schedule. I also have a recommendation that we count December 17th as our first snow day. What that meaning for in consideration for the e-learning days, because remember how we would have 2 days that we would give students. So that means if we have another day where we have to call a day off school, they'd have 1 more that inclement weather will allow them to have a snow day. And then after that, we're able to then, if we have any kind of knowledge of whether that's coming, we could implement that e-learning day. What that does is it allows for the students to have that asynchronous time with their teachers. It counts as a day. They don't have to change their calendars. We don't have to miss having that Easter Monday off, and a lot of families take that time to go travel to see other family members for the holiday, as well as worrying about adding days on after Memorial Day for families as well. So those are two recommendations that I'm asking the board to consider approving.
Questions for Dr. Wu?
Do we, are the teachers aware of this? Have we heard any, anything they would prefer?
They know that we're very limited days, number of days off in the spring, and they know we have to stick to the contract. I think 3 days, yeah.
So I'll have a question. So if we don't stick to the contract, we'd have to create, let's say, hypothetically, we wouldn't do it, right? Let's say we don't want to bring them back. Will we have to go back and amend the contract?
Or potentially enter into some sort of MOU with a good reason as to why we wouldn't hold them to their contract,
Okay.
number of days working.
I have a question as to the snow day thing.
Yeah.
So, we got 165 days of student contact that we have to have. We have 170 built in. So by doing that, what does that gain us? Other than we're 1 day closer to an e-learning day.
Yeah.
Is that
It
basically
does,
the,
just in the event of if we end up with snow, with how many different times that we
Yeah.
can't predict it, and when we have to call it.
Okay.
That's my only consideration.
So I have another question. Do we, so if we continue to hit every day, right, so we'd be at 169 then?
Right.
would be at once, if we have another snow day, it would be at 168, and then the learning days would
We
be
would-
well above, but we'd have to make another decision at another time.
Right, so what happened is say we had a snow day next week, we'd have 160, 165 days is required, we'd have 3 bonus days that we have sitting there, which means if something happens overnight, well, remember, we have to have advance notice to families as well as teachers and students, so it doesn't allow us, it gives us those 3 buffer days for emergency closures.
I just think everybody should remember that when we get the schedule out there and there's family vacations that are planned on days that we're not here and stuff, so it's tough. It's a tough decision when you're gonna bring them back. Either we've brought them back before on that Monday after Easter, and we're missing a lot of kids sometimes.
Right.
So then are we really doing anybody a favor there? So I would beg to, my personal opinion would be that right now with where we are with alignment and, professional development, they could always use another day of professional development. We lost the day of learning already. I'm not so sure that we're gonna gain it back, so I'm in favor of that.
What does it look like? So the only part, I guess, the second part of the recommendation, what's the advantage of making it a snow day?
Meaning just counting it as a snow day as it relates to e-learning, so I'll just make sure it was clear in that language. It was still closed for the reason it was closed on all the safety precautions. But we count it so that what this allows us to do is if we have advanced notice, like say we know the storm is coming on Friday, we know that you're gonna have to cancel school. It gives us an opportunity to not lose a day of learning and still have that as an e-learning day, so teachers are able to continue teaching students that particular day.
I guess I'm sort of inclined not to make it a snow day. I don't know. Is there? I don't.
If I would, because otherwise you're gonna have to have 2 more snow days before you even get the opportunity to try this e-learning. I guess I'm kind of in favor of trying e-learning, see how that
So with the 3 e-learning days. Right, well, 5 e-learning days, but I should say there's 5 days already extra scheduled. One that we use right now. So if we add in e-learning days, we can miss 4 days, and then we have 3 e-learning days as well. That we're going back, so we're basically having, that's how many days we would have to make up or be out to use all 3 of those learning days.
Yeah. And please know that 165 days is just what statute requires. Most districts around the state are always more than that, some at 171, 172. And not really just to build in for snow, it's more about the learning.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess for the first piece, for the date, I'm hesitant to say the teachers are gonna wanna come back on June 1st. Can I ask the principals a question? Sure. I don't know, do you guys, as principals with your staff, I mean, do you feel they'd rather come back on June 1st, or do you feel they'd rather just come back that Easter Monday?
Not sure I want to answer that question.
I don't know, you know what I
You
mean?
could get it
It's-
wrong
I
either
don't-
way.
I guess I'd like to, I want to make sure we're bringing it back on a day that the majority would prefer, but I don't know that if we would even know that.
Michelle, can you see, is Mr. Shaw on? By any
Or I
chance?
could just go and ask versus asking.
He is.
Well,
We could table it, we don't have to make a decision to it. We can pull it and table it, and make a decision. at the next board meeting.
I just, with it being the day after Memorial Day, I'm wondering if a
Well,
lot
they're
of.
already
the
here.
second day after.
Yeah, they're
Oh,
already
they're
here.
already here one of those.
They're
days.
already here the
Got
Tuesday
it.
after Memorial Day. This is.
Okay, so then
Wednesday.
it shouldn't impact.
Right, it's not that,
Got it, okay.
well, they still have to come. So, yeah, you're right.
Right, they wouldn't have already prepped. I
The
was thinking
reason
it was
I-
the day
Right,
right
if
after.
this were if they were coming back the Tuesday after Memorial Day, that would be a different conversation. But in this case, they're already here that Tuesday, and I'm so concerned with having no time in March.
Yep,
And that's a long month. One in-service day in January, long month. I fear to take that Monday from them.
If I would accept the recommendations if the board is interested. As they're proposed.
You making a motion?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Motion was made by Director Roaring to follow the recommendations. The first being bring teachers back on June 1st, 2022. The second to count December 17th as the first snow day, so only one additional inclement weather day is necessary before we can call an e-learning day. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, don't you feel it would be wise to ask the teachers prior to this, so we could poll them without making this decision this evening? I mean, I don't know how they feel. It's their lives, I mean, it's not mine. So.
So I think we need a
You need to vote.
yes, and then we'll have to vote to table it too, I believe, right?
If that's what happens.
Right, if that's what happens. Any other discussion? All right, so I think everybody,
So we can change this. If we vote on this tonight and approve it, they talk to the teachers and they want April 18th in the worst way, we can come back and change this.
It's not
For the
set.
board, as long as the majority says it, yeah.
Okay.
anybody else discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No,
Mary, anybody abstain?
I see.
So we got a 4-1-1.
boy.
So it's really 5-1. Motion passes. All right, next on the agenda, attendee strategic planning proposal from MSBA.
So as you know, part of the evaluation is to get working on strategic planning for the district. In doing so, I contacted MSBA, and because I know that they do strategic planning for districts. This is information that came from their proposal for us to consider tonight. Strategic planning services offer a significant amount of internal and external stakeholder engagement to ensure that all voices are heard, recognized, and valued. Part of the reason that I'm thinking about having an outside facilitator versus me facilitating this, and I've done World Cafes for school start times. I've led lots of that type of work. However, bringing in an outside facilitator can ensure the community that you have a non-biased approach. When you have a superintendent lead the strategic planning process for a district, some people could assume or think that the superintendent is forcing their agenda onto members and the board. And that is not what I want to do. I want the community, our teachers, and our students to participate fully in this work. And I need to be able to listen and be a part of the process versus necessarily leading it. However, I can do that work. I have met with our student council and I've met with our National Honor Society, explaining to students that we need their voice. And so they know that these meetings are going to be coming in whatever format they come, so that their participation is a part of it. Student voice is so important in this. I've also met with our teacher leadership team and explained how very important it is that the teachers are a part of this. Remember, we have to set goals. Currently, our district does not have goals set as part of the strategic planning process other than the world's best workforce goals. And so we need to talk about what additional goals can we have as a district that really supports our community, and teachers' voice and students' voice are imperative in that work because they're closest to it. So that's my feeling with bringing in an outside organization. The other thing is MSBA knows schools. That's their work. All of their staff are in the work of schools and school business. So I'll just quickly go through this. I know you have this. The next slide, please. MSBA will develop the foundational elements, belief statements, mission statement, vision statement. We have that on as a district. They'll work us through the process to ensure that the current vision and mission and belief statements still fit Royalton today for who we are. Then we'll actually identify focus areas and create goals and objectives related to those focus areas. So it can go beyond just those world's best workforce goals that are given to us from MDE. We do not have input in what the goal is. We just have to produce the data for them. So this allows for our voice. Next slide. This is over a 12 to 14 week period. Now, we could decrease this time period and then ask for less, and potentially then ask for it would obviously cost less for us if we feel that that's too long of a time frame, too much to navigate for us. I'm sure we can go back and talk. I just wanted to make sure you saw their initial offer. They will conduct a 2 to 3 hour in-service for the board team. And so basically talking about implementing that strategic plan from a board level and then from a management level. What does that actually look like to implement it? You want to pull up that timeline, Michelle? They gave a nice little timeline example of what it could look like. They'll be flexible with us for what we would need as a district. So you can see that we would have our planning meeting, school board superintendent review the strategic planning process and timeline. This is kind of the start of that work. And then I would be charged with working with the team to gather data. And then we extend invitations to strategic committee, the strategic planning committee members, and they'll survey our community to get input from them, and then they'll hold several listening sessions. You can see that there, that they'll gather information through that process with our stakeholders, and again, scheduling those listening sessions. They will also then analyze that stakeholder input and provide for us reports back of what they said, of what the information tells us as a district. And then we can do vision related activities. And then they will prepare a summary document in between meetings. So they're gonna always be able to come with us with the data back in a fashion that's actually taken that data so we can look at it in aggregate level. And then again, they'll host a second strategic planning committee meeting and talk about that mission statement, vision statement, and those belief statements that we have. Make sure again that they're where we want them to be for our district right now. And then they will get us a plan on a page so that it's not so complex that nobody does anything with it. I've been a part of that before, and maybe you have in different organizations you worked in. Do all this work, it's a complicated 10-point plan with all these subdivision. Yeah, put in a cabinet because who has time for that? So we need to make it so that it's actually something that's usable and that we actually work with and implement. And then they will also work with that self-evaluation. Remember we talked about the board self-evaluating your work as a board. This all aligns to that work that we've already begun. We'll talk about that goal setting for us as a team here. And so you can see they will then do an in-service to talk about those responsibilities. So we'll get additional training from them on how the process will work for implementation. And then of course, who's responsible for what? So the superintendent and staff, what are they responsible for? What are they going to make sure gets implemented, and then report that to the board on how that's going. So that's the timeline. You want to go back to the PowerPoint? Next. So the cost for them to come in and do this work, that their initial offer would be $10,300, and that's with the 12 to 14 week timeline and everything that we just went through. They will provide a toolkit of resources, staff facilitation, and they'll record it, all the information, as well as develop all the reports. You get their whole team, you get their communications, they have a board development team, a technology, admin support, etc. They'll again get a strategic plan on a page, so it's not so cumbersome that it's not usable. They will support and work with our team to make sure it's in the development of a document that can help scheduling next steps. They will provide a one-year follow-up if needed and give us ongoing support before, after, and during the process. So the board in service will include review the strategic planning process, introduce this plan, suggest next steps, work around the board development, so kind of continual professional development for the school board with this process, and then basically governance model, etc. They had talked about this is all again in their in service of what they can do with us as a board. I'm sure if we don't want to do all of this, we wouldn't need to, but then there too may decrease costs. But they would talk about that last bullet I found really important, is discussing alignment of district's goals with the strategic plan with the board and superintendent goals. So they're all connected and they're not disparate and linked. So I'm making a recommendation tonight that we utilize them for strategic planning. And if you would like me to, if you were wanting to decrease this amount of time, if you feel maybe this is too extensive of 12 to 14 weeks, I can easily go back and have a conversation about decreasing that time and then maybe decrease the cost. Or we can not use them and I can continue looking for another organization. I'd have to do some research on who works with schools to understand that we're not a business, we're a school, functions a little differently. Or I could lead it myself.
I have a question, full of questions tonight. Are we able to, so I do like the piece of using them for like the survey and the data collection, because I think that takes a lot of time and a lot of probably IT resources. Could we use them for like just that piece? My other thought is, and I don't know if this is something we could do, but is there a way that we could form kind of our own committee with staff, students, some teachers, and part of the community board members to try to do it ourselves, I guess?
We'll definitely form a committee for sure. We'll call it a committee to facilitate that. You want us to facilitate that ourselves?
Yeah.
I think thing I worry about when we get somebody from here to facilitate it. If you think back to when we started the superintendent search, if one board member or one person in the community gets involved and really has a loud voice, it will become their plan. And, you know, that can happen really easily because, well, the amount of volunteers you're gonna get is going to be minimal, probably. So, you know, having an outside group that can, they've seen it all before, you know, they've done it all before, they've dealt with people that have got in, and I'm not saying it would happen, but I can see where if somebody got really loud and really, you know, really pushy, that it would end up being one person's plan and not a group plan. Or I think we've seen that in the data when we did the superintendent search. We've seen big ideas in the surveys come out, but then we've seen some ideas that we thought were big show up to be really small ideas too. And so sometimes it was good to, what was there, what wasn't there was as eye-opening to me. You know, things that I thought were bigger issues ended up not being as big to everybody else. So that's all I'm looking at is, you know, we've had a really good experience with the superintendent search, and that went well. You know, they just, it looks a lot the same. You know, they set up the meetings. We're really good at kicking the can down the road. So yeah, well, maybe we won't get to this until next meeting. And if you start this off like that, that's a good start. That's all I can see.
Mr. Chair, I kind of agree with Tyra though. I think we can, you know, decrease our costs somewhat and still, I really feel it's a new day, Randy. And I think there are different people on the board and in the communities that are more involved or want to be more involved than maybe they have been in the past. So, you know, I can't help but think that maybe we could defray some of the cost and still be able to conduct this in a very timely manner without consuming 3 or 4 months of time.
Agreement. I would like to continue with MSB. I thought they were very valuable. But I think maybe an abbreviated package, still have them posted, but condense that. That was a lot. I agree, Mary, that's a lot. And that cost is pretty high. But I do think they're valuable, so I would like to explore having them lead it at a reduced fashion, I guess. I guess so the question though, if they're hosting these, will we have an on-site representative now?
It'd be virtual. The people can be here. They would be virtual, kind of like what we did.
Right, so how do we think that would go with the community? I thought it was fine for a smaller group, but if we're doing a large community outreach, I don't know if there's a chance they could come in person. I don't think they need to be all the time, but like that, if there's a big community meeting, I think that could be nice to have them here in person.
That doesn't have to be every meeting. I
Right,
think
they
could
could just
pick
be
and
one
choose,
meeting
yeah,
potentially.
exactly.
Just the
I
big,
agree.
the big community gathering, and then from there, the smaller subgroups, I think virtual is fine.
I think there's a difference when everybody's virtual to when 1 or 2 members are virtual, because you know, I think back to those meetings that we had when everybody was virtual, it seemed like everybody had the same platform. But then when, you know, when one person's virtual and everybody else is, it seems a little wonky to me. Yeah, it would be nice on a big group if they were there.
Well, we did this last time, right? When we first did the strategic goals and that stuff, and it was led internally. And, you know, not that it was bad, but there was no other advice given other than from the person that was leading it at the time. So I would rather have MSBA come in and do it and give us options of here's a few different ways to frame this problem, a different approach to the problem. You know, some of those ideas that here's a different way to look at it, their perspective, and then we can take that and put into that survey or into the questions that we ask at the cafes to get the feedback. So it's not just one-sided and no, we're good enough. We've got enough answers. Now we'll move on to the next thing.
So I do like the MSBA as well. I've nothing but good experience so far with them with the superintendent search, and then our goal setting thing, that was very successful. I don't like the cost. I do like them facilitating. And obviously it's facilitating and their schedule does have, right, so that it starts even with the strategic planning. Now, I'm sure we could, if we decide not to, we could look at their schedule and borrow that, right? But the strategic planning group, right? I don't recall, we haven't met for a while with the COVID stuff, right?
World's Best Workforce.
World's Best,
is that
okay,
committee.
so that group right there is already made up of a cross section of the community, teachers, students, so that it's a good start. I think to me, the kicker is if they're not going to be on site, especially if we do community cafes again, I think in order to be successful, I would really think somebody's got to be on site. So that's just my, like Randy, you guys said, if they're not, I don't understand how they could do it there. And still, especially if we're jotting down on pads and talking, and that would be really difficult. So I think it's a good option, but to me, the kicker would be if they don't offer to go on site, then I think we have to look for other options. And I don't know that the 12 to 14 weeks is that, because you look at scheduling
I know, it's
meetings
Yeah, that many
and okay, cafes and
You
they're
have
just,
lots of time, but I don't.
what's that?
I don't have lots of time. I have a lot of other meetings to go to.
Well,
So,
we-
you
When we
know,
did the strategic plan the first time, there was a lot of hours that went into that.
And that would be the other thing I'd catch. So if we don't have somebody help with this, that's a lot of time aggregating data. I mean, and making sure that from any survey we conduct on the phone to what we pick up at, in-person sessions as well. So
Yeah. And ensuring your survey questions are, you're asking to get the information received. People just think they can send out a survey and those questions make sense. And they're like, well, that's not really what I was looking for the answer. Well, it's because you didn't design the question. So, I mean, people have vast degrees to figure out how to best survey people. And so that's one thing that experienced facilitation can do. But again, we go back and I can talk with them some more to see about what other options might we have.
I wonder if another thing to frame isn't that we have somewhat of a strategic plan already. So maybe it'd be more of a realignment rather than a
Full-blown.
full, just a real alignment of our previous ideas, because those ideas are old, but they still were values to this district not real long ago. I would guess that a lot of those things are close to the same. Granted, post-COVID, maybe if we're in post-COVID yet, I don't know if we are or not, but everything has changed a little bit, but those ideas were valid at one time. Not that we have to be beholden to them, but
yeah, and I think we have to, the one thing is that the goals that we created were really weren't I think we could do better, right? I think they were kind of aligned with what we did for the world's best workforce and that type of thing. And I think they should have maybe been a little higher, a higher level maybe, or looked a little differently.
something that really hit me a couple meetings ago. Angela asked a question, I don't even know what it was about. How does it affect the students? And that's a question we should be asking with everything we pass here. And this strategic plan should be part of that. It should be a question that we ask with everything we pass. And, maybe we need to get back to the basics a little bit more, but you asked that, I don't know, it was 2 months ago or something. And I'm just like, that's a really good question. We should ask that all the time, and I thought that was a wonderful question that time. And it's really something that, we just need to keep at our front of our heads is, this is about the students. This is about their education, this first of all. So
So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask our superintendent then to talk to MSBA, see if we can get a little bit better deal that will fit our district, being that we do seem to have some things in place already. I mean, with the Sourcewell group, that type of thing, so maybe that could cut costs a bit, if nothing else. I mean, I would be very much in favor of doing that.
I would also.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't mind using them to facilitate. I just really want to make sure we don't just let them
Right.
kind of take over.
Too
We don't want to lose
expensive.
our voice and we don't want to lose the community or the students or the staffs.
So do we? I think we just table this, right? We don't, there's no motion. With those questions, I think too, even this, I would be interested to see, are they gonna be on site for those in person would be.
Those are fair questions, Randy, too, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ross, sorry.
It's close.
So used
It's
to you.
close. It's close. It's an
Sorry,
R.
Russ.
It's an
You
R.
can call me Lane again.
I've been told a lot. Okay, so we will move on to 10E. Policy reading. So we'll look at the first, so there's one in first reading, it's 412 expense reimbursement, so I believe that is going into our policy committee for review. Others, if you have other members, please take a look at it, provide feedback to any of the members on that committee. The next group is the approval of second policy reading. All these, with the exception of 506, are the final reading due to their just minor changes into the policies. So those policies are 412, mandate reporting on child neglect or physical or sexual abuse. 414. Numbers are hard for me. Words aren't so bad, but numbers are hard. So 414, maltreatment reporting form. 415, mandate reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults. 514, bullying prohibition policy. Prohibition, I'm sorry. Bullying prohibition policy.
I'll move these policies for approval.
I'll second.
So the motion was made by Director Hackett and seconded by Director Lane. Is there any discussion?
Did the bullying one get posted?
Bullying?
Once it's done,
It's supposed to be, yeah, it's good.
we have a list of going around.
Yep, perfect.
Other discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving these second reading policies, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? And abstain? Motion passes 6-0. And we do have a third reading, the approval of the third reading policy. It is 524, internet acceptable use and safety policy. Obviously, it's in its third reading, so this one had a little more changes into it. And attached is all these policies were attached to the board book, but you can kind of take a look to see where they were. Glad to see you guys added TikTok.
I'll say.
So motion to approve by Bauman, seconded by Hofstad. Any other discussion?
I can only imagine in 10 years TikTok will be as aged as the pager is.
We can only hope, right? All right, motion was by Director Bauman, seconded by Director Hofstad. All in favor of approving policy 524, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Abstain. Motion passes 6-0-0. We do have 10F. If you remember, Todd presented on the pay quality implementation report. This is the report that we're required to do every 3 years to make sure that our pay equity is in line with what we were, and I believe we're giving a thumbs up, everything's where it should be.
a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to move the pay equity report for adoption.
I will second.
Motion made by Director Hackett, seconded by Director Bauman. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed and abstained. Motion passes 6-0. We're coming to number 11, upcoming meeting schedule. So I have in front of me February 8th, 12 lunchtime, the Finance Committee meeting, Tuesday. Wednesday, February 9th, 9 a.m. policy meeting. Thursday, February 10th, there's a RESPA negotiations at 3:30. Monday, February 28th, 6 p.m. regular board meeting.
I'll be virtual for that meeting.
All right. No other, everything look fine there? And I will look for a motion to close the meeting for negotiation strategies permitted by the Minnesota statute, section 13D.03.
So moved.
Wayne, second by Hofstad. Any discussion? Okay, so Dr. Werkamp is asking us to also include a superintendent evaluation discussion in that. You're good with that? Okay, so all in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed? Same sign. Anybody abstain? Okay, so we will go to close meeting at 7:27 and we will come back at 7:37. Closed.
Good job.
Yeah. Good job, Rob.
People are supposed to be 35.